as a little bit of background about the Alchemist Kitchen was started about 5 years ago. I'm the founder. I'm the CEO. I like to think of myself as the chief experience officer, but I am also the chief executive officer. And my interest in plant medicine and plant healing started about 10, 12 years ago. I was quite interested in how we could reacquaint people with the power of plants as an option, for people who maybe didn't want to depend on pharmaceutical products for all of their health needs. We certainly have a lot of respect and appreciation for medicine and the many benefits medicine and science brings us, but in terms of mental health, which is really the primary topic tonight, there are options, and the interest in microdosing and the emergence of microdosing and reacquaintance with microdosing allows us to explore the use of mushrooms, very complementary to plants. Mushrooms are not plants, but very complementary. And my personal story is just very briefly. I started the Alchemist Kitchen 5 years ago. About 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, during COVID, I had a group of psychotherapists who came to me and said that they had patients very depressed, dealing with addiction, and very completely treatment resistant. Treatment resistant is a term used when the patient is not responding well to antidepressants for depression, specifically for diagnosis of depression. And they said, look, Lou, we really trust you. Perhaps you could be of some help to us. We'd like to send you some patients, not very many, who are treatment resistant, and perhaps you could consult with them and point them in the right direction if they elected to want to experiment with psilocybin specifically, And the way that it came across was very much like a bit of a calling, like, please help, And as many of you know, most people's experience with psychedelics has been recreational. Back in college, we went to we did some psychedelics. Concert was awesome, and people may have had very transformative, life-changing experiences, and they may have had very life-threatening experiences, depending on whatever they took. And most people don't know what they took and what the dosage was, and let's call that kind of the recreational experience, And so I was confronted with how to handle these patients. So we just started, and we started having consultations. And what now 2.5 years later, we have had one-on-one consultations with well over 130 patients. And so we've learned a tremendous amount doing these one-on-one consultations, assisting these patients to secure some product that would help them. And the recovery has been, really remarkable. Parallel with this, there has been this tremendous amount of research, Johns Hopkins and the MAPS groups and organizations that I've been blessed to become very, close with over the last 10 years, providing support. Alchemist Kitchen has always been a place that people could come to help promote plant medicines and raise money and do the research and so on. So I think that we're in a place now. There's also been more documentaries. Many of you maybe know Mike Pollan, who's a good friend of The Alchemist Kitchen, and Paul Stamets, and all of these kind of influencers have been contributing to a greater awareness and a greater effort to look at microdosing and the use of these plants and mushrooms in a medicinal way. So I like to say, we're not the doctor, we're not medical, we don't make claims, and we're not recreational. We're really trying to define a medicinal path, and very few people are really doing that, a medicinal path. There are 4 lanes. There's the medical. There's a lot of drug development being done. There's a lot of mental illness in the world. There'll be a lot of opportunity for the pharmaceutical industry to find ways to capitalize on that. The recreational industry, we know. And then there's the ceremonial lane where people maybe want to do ceremonial experiences, ayahuasca. They go on these journeys. We have a great deal of experience with that. But this medicinal is very close to my heart. So my work, what I've been trying to do for the last 4 or 5 years, is build this medicinal lane where people could start with no experience, just life, desire for personal growth and expanding their consciousness, And so personal growth is something we're all interested in more than ever. The main purpose of microdosing as a start has really only one intention. There's a series of stages. The first intention is elevation of mood. We find that if we can help the user elevate their mood, what happens is the anxiety that we're all struggling with, and we have big ranges of anxiety, from very low debilitating depression to just low mood, just feeling low, going through different cycles. As a consequence of stress, kind of world that we're living in. The other consequence of microdosing, tempering the anxiety, is the triggers that tend to escalate upset or anger and throws you completely off your day is very mitigated. Much easier to manage because the cognitive uplift in the brain is just enough elevation that you're in a good attitude, a good mood, so that you can kind of deal with issues. You kind of differentiate where something deserves your attention or not need the overreaction that very often we're subject to when we're emotionally vulnerable or feeling low. When we're low mood, we're very vulnerable to overreacting. We're almost waiting for it. We worry too much, all of the things that go with mood. So if you can elevate mood through a protocol of microdosing, then you can really do amazing things, because microdosing is also almost universally self-directed. So we have several hundred clients that we're not doctors, so they're not our patients, but they've either been referred or we've met them through classes such as this one, online, classes. And we have a couple of rules. So our rules is, well, what we learned through working with this initial group and community of patients is we should meet everyone, that we should offer complimentary consultations one-on-one in order to assist the user to set the right intention, make sure they're safe, give them a sense of comfort that if they're curious about microdosing, well, there's a process. The first, elevation of mood. That's done over several weeks, a month. Normally, the microdosing is done on a protocol, 3 days on, 2 days off. There are different protocols. Stemets has a couple. James Fadiman has a, those of you maybe are a little more acquainted with the industry. In our world, we think protocols are structures that can be repeated, but don't necessarily have to be religious. You can modify your protocol. The whole thing is to find a sweet spot. Microdosing is not forever. Patients or clients that maybe are on an antidepressant, very often one of the big intentions, one of the most popular intentions is, I'm on this antidepressant, I don't like the side effects, I've reduced it, but it can't quite stop. Most therapists will say to their patients, if you want to try something else, that's fine, but you have to stop your antidepressant. We don't believe in that being necessary at small doses. So people might set their intention, I want to elevate my mood, I want to feel better, but I really want to bring myself off of an antidepressant. So that can be accomplished over time by doing small amounts of microdosing with mushroom. And the mushroom usually will overcome the antidepressant, especially if the user is intending that. Right. Another big interest is reducing the use of alcohol or cannabis. Cannabis today is gotten very, very potent. Many clients that we have that have been traditional cannabis users, they smoking way too much. And obviously with alcohol, if one is under a lot of stress, very often they're using the alcohol. So, too much alcohol, way too toxic. And one of the great benefits of microdosing is you can really bring alcohol consumption down to, it's just quite amazing how fast you can bring the alcohol consumption down. And in fact, I think over the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see a tremendous groundswell of research supporting the use of psychedelic mushrooms, small doses, to treat alcoholism and treat more serious drinkers. So there's some really awesome intentions. We have, for example, maybe 20, 30 women in our community. They only microdose now. They may have started, depressed or low mood, and now they only microdose around their hormonal, their cycles. Because what we're discovering with the use of psychedelics is that if she microdoses into her cycle, the emotional vulnerability that's quite heightened for many, many women, quite heightened, can be balanced. So she microdoses into the cycle, it elevates her mood, she's much easier to cope with the emotional tension and vulnerability, and that's a recurring event. Women in a little bit older, maybe you're beginning to, facing premenopausal, menopausal, all of the hormonal issues that are so challenging for women. Microdosing can become a great ally. So my point here is, although the elevation of mood is the first intention, lots of different nuances to intention on how to use microdosing to eliminate obstructions, because really personal growth is usually about removing obstructions, Okay, so let's assume the mushroom comes over and you're microdosing, and then and you feel pretty good. Your attitude starts, you feel better. You're dealing with the kids better, your friends, your partners, you're in just a better attitude. So second phase is trauma. The mushroom is going to identify trauma because the mushroom, unlike alcohol or cannabis, tends to really go to the root cause. So they're coming over to the house. They say, well, so what's up? You know, what's happening? And it's going to go to the root cause. People start to have some insight. Gee, you know, I got some unfinished business. I make my income over here. I have a whole career. I've been blessed, but my heart's not in it anymore. It's too transactional, or I just don't feel right. I want to go through career transition. Microdosing, the mushroom is quite friendly to encouraging people to give themselves some permission to look at their careers and the work that they do, and begin to take a look at how they might make some changes. The number one of the biggest issues that microdosing can help with is procrastination. Procrastination is very endemic today. People, they start, you know, you don't feel so good, you feel like your self-worth, you don't, you know, it's very, very challenging to move oneself forward. But microdosing of psychedelic mushrooms is a fantastic ally to moving, making decisions. All right, so 2 stages. Elevation of mood to deal with the immediate anxiety, temper, escalation, and then it moves to trauma. Where's the trauma? Some trauma is deep. 70% of those who microdose in our world, sooner or later, want to go and do deeper work. Some of that deeper work they cannot do on their own. We like the idea there's a certain phase of self-direction, and then there's a phase where people want assistance. They don't want to explore what would be traditionally called altered state or tripping. We look at it as altered state or state changing in order to go deeper into understanding and releasing trauma and becoming more creative, becoming more whole. That's the next stage. And there's many now ways in which people are seeking its assistance, going for the ketamine treatments, which is because ketamine is legal. And let's understand that psychedelics today is decriminalizing. Oregon is legal, decriminalized. Colorado is legal. California is on the way. A bunch of different cities and states. Rhode Island is about to go. New York is legislatively about to decriminalize. So there is a process underway where it is decriminalizing, but it is not yet legal. It's not regulated. And so one of the risks, one of the obstructions that we all have in dealing with this field is, how do we provide trust and safety to those that are interested and curious and want to move their personal growth and their consciousness forward? That's a challenge. It's in many ways, that's the biggest challenge today, is where do you go? How do you find good sources? And how do you know? And that's something that we are very dedicated in trying to provide a framework so that people can make up their minds. You know, you can make a self-directed decision. It may work better. We all have people in our world that we care about need this maybe more than we do. There's tremendous benefits for older adults. In fact, we're doing a lot of work with older adults, early Parkinson's, where your microdosing is really making a big difference, for not for treating the disease, but for actually helping memory and some recollection and inflection, insights. I had a guy the other day, 85 years old, early Parkinson's, was a very prominent partner in a law firm. It's the isolation that's so challenging, and many of and he been doing a little bit of microdosing. His daughter is a client. She came out of depression, and he had, what a beautiful insight. He was remembering when his daddy took him fishing on the lake at 12 years old, 60 years ago, and just the insight and being able to have a little bit of introspection and thought there just made him feel a lot more comfortable. And you're going to see a lot more work in the next few years with older adults. It's very psychographic. At the same time we're seeing all the benefits with older adults, we're also seeing parents treating autism. There's a whole society already developing of parents with autistic children, and autistic children are really restricted in terms of what will work and what will not work. So you have a lot more. You have parents who are much more willing to try things outside of the normal medicinal pharmaceutical offering, medical offering, and we're going to see a lot of good, a lot of good research. So a lot of my work and what I'm trying to encourage in hosting these classes is that the research and the science is on our side, that we're dealing with mushroom is not addictive. When you stop it, you don't crave it. You don't do microdosing forever. You do it, and when you do microdosing, it deepens your contemplative practice. If someone microdoses for mood issues or hormonal or life transition, what happens is if you have a contemplative practice, your yoga stretches deeper, your meditation is deeper. You get more enthusiastic to try things that maybe you haven't tried because of procrastination. So many benefits. So what's the risk? Why isn't everybody just doing it? The biggest risk is people have a hard time knowing who and how and where to secure the product, what form of ingestion. And there are some risks. The number one risk that we see is fatigue, because when the neurotransmitters are stimulated, and I'm not, we're going to send you guys, a little bit of a PDF that talks much more about the physiology and the chemical side of the benefits and how it actually works. But it basically, the psilocybin is being converted into psilocin, which is stimulating the serotonin. Most of the serotonin is in the gut, but it travels up to the cognitive, and it regenerates. And one of the greatest, it regenerates the circuits over time, which is often called neuroplasticity. Where, can you imagine a deep-seated trauma? Let's say one had a very serious childhood trauma, maybe abuse, maybe mommy and daddy didn't get along, maybe some loss, some loss that was not easy to handle. They carry that trauma. So neuroplasticity is when you surrender. The memory is not lost, but you become aware that you were a witness to something, and the emotional trigger that it tends to stimulate throughout one's life is forgiven. It's released. And that alone, breaking down some childhood traumas related to how the parents, they do the best they can, but the release is so important. So fatigue is one risk, because sometimes when the serotonin is really stimulated, you don't feel groggy, but you can feel a little bit of fatigue. You don't use psychedelics at all if you're diagnosed with a serious, like bipolar or schizophrenia, without very close supervision by a doctor. Yeah, the therapist is an important ally. We have a lot of experience working with therapists. In fact, many clients are coming to us, and very often they never had a therapist. They couldn't afford a therapist, or they didn't really want to go to a therapist. And then once they microdose, they really know why they need to speak to a therapist, to work through things, to talk through things. So very often microdosing can be a fantastic preparation to actually spend some time with a therapist for shorter periods of time, not this tradition conditioning where if one is privileged to be able to afford a therapist, go see a therapist every week for 10 years is not, in our view, been very healthy, a healthy practice. You know, you go, you get the work done, and you keep trying to support your personal growth. You know. The form of ingestion is very important. With psilocybin particularly, and also there are many strains. So people think psilocybin's one strain. There are 100, 150. There are many strains. We use many strains. Some strains are very good for mood elevation, get more cognitive. Other strains are more in the body, more working with you feel it more in the body than you do cognitively. But most good microdosing emphasizes mood, elevation of mood, so more cognitive, more gentle. If you're someone who is struggling with grief, heartbreak, sometimes microdosing isn't the right solution, because it'll elevate your mood, but if you really have grief and heartbreak, it needs to be handled differently than mood and growth and creativity. You got to heal that. And so we just noticing this in the last year, you know. So there are some mushroom, like reishi-based mushrooms, that are very good for healing the heart. Let's just call it heart openers, healing the heart. There are other psychoactive plants and mushrooms that are very good for healing the heart. And it's very easy to mistake depression, the root of depression, and I don't mean depression, let's not say clinically, but low mood. Let's call it low mood, because depression means something different. But low mood, where really you're just dealing with some grief that hasn't been, and you lose someone. You go through a point in your life, you lost someone, or recently a passing of a mom or a dad, and very often people take it pretty hard. And if you don't pay attention to that and handle the healing of that, it can creates a lot of negative consequences. So, and we can certainly talk more about that. We talk about that a lot in our one-on-one consultations, you know, and of trying to identify, so what is really going on? What is the intention? So a good thing to know that the strain of the psilocybin, if you're looking, you go out on the internet, or you have some, you know, everybody knows a Reiki healer. The Reiki healer says, I have mushrooms for you. Okay, where are the mushrooms coming from? Oh, I know this guy, you know, he lives in Vermont, and he knows another guy. And so one of the problems with sourcing is, where is it coming from? What exactly is the strain? How much is the dosage? And so one outcome tonight for sure is that if you're out in the world and you're meeting people, and certainly it's becoming more popular among certain groups of people, make sure that you're asking about the strain, you're asking about the dosage. Dosage is key. The generally speaking, a microdose, which is subperceptual, right? So it's slightly perceptual. When you elevate your mood, you feel it. but it's working even when you don't perceive it. You that dosage is 125 milligrams to 250 milligrams. You're pretty safe within 125 milligrams to 250 milligrams. To give you some reference, in order to have altered state where you're having, visuals, you're in 2 grams, 3 grams. So it's a long way from 200 milligrams. So they really are quite small, the doses. That's why good microdosing, well formulated, you can be taking a lot of other medications without too much risk of contraindication. Mushroom can kind of get in there and do its work. So 125 to 150. You can take them in the form of capsules, probably the most popular. Capsules are the least onset. You don't feel the onset. It takes longer. It's going through the digestive system. But capsules are very reliable. They're often taken once every 3 days. Chocolate. Okay, chocolate is become more popular because a lot of people don't like, a recreational mushroom is dried. It's only recently that those who dry, that sell, recreationally psychedelic mushroom, they'll grind it up and put it in chocolate soup, put it in a nice package. The problem with chocolate is it does taste good, but you're not sure where the dose is. Unless it's made medicinally, you don't know where the dose is. The dose could be in one part of the chocolate and not. So in our world, when we deal with making a chocolate or providing chocolate in, as a form of ingestion, the chocolate cannot come from a dried mushroom, or it has to be homogenized so that when it's infused into the chocolate, into the mold, it's super compliant. So if grandpa had a nibble, or you take, the dose is very exact. I can't emphasize enough how important it is from a medicinal mindset. Remember, I'm talking to you guys from a medicinal mindset. That's how we operate. You want to make sure that if you take chocolate, it's been infused, and the only reason it's not infused is because the consumer doesn't really know. And but if you're really dealing with mood, you got to know the dosage and the strain are a certain way. The strains that are really good for elevation of mood tend to be albinos, the Avery albinos. The golden teachers are pretty good for elevation of mood. There are a lot of different, there are different strains, yeah, so I want to make that clear. You can also take it in the form of drops, because with drops you can really control the dosage. So, if you're feeling anxiety, if you're proper protocol, you can take a few drops, you skip a day, you take a few more drops, you take a little more. You're self-directing. So unlike those of us, back in the day, somebody said, "Here's a mushroom. Let me know how you feel in 7 hours." That is not medicinal. What's medicinal is a lot of control. So you try it, and then you that felt okay, or I didn't feel anything. And then you increase the dosage, and you build an understanding between your mind, body, and spirit of what works. People that are drinking a lot of alcohol, if you take a dosage before you go out drinking a lot of alcohol, you will not feel like drinking all that alcohol. So it ties in. If you're working in hormonal issues, you take it as you're going into your cycle. You deepen the frequency of the microdosing so that you can get enough of the medicine activated into the brain, so you can manage the emotional challenges. So everything becomes pretty nuanced. Yeah. Now, when we get to the later stages, next stages will be more about the type of assistance. There are different types of assistance, just really briefly, just to touch on it. Some people just want to try a deeper dose because they want to feel a higher elevation. All they need is a sitter. A sitter is someone, we define a sitter as someone who is very experienced. They're not doctors. They may not have that much therapeutic training. They're a little bit like a doula that comes to help with pregnancy, but they're very experienced. They often could be prior. They may have some. They have plenty of personal experience. Maybe they've been in service to others, but just as a sitter, they can set a nice mood. They're conversant. And so we have quite often where someone will say, hey, can you just come to my house? I really want to try a deeper dive. I'm going to invite a couple of friends, that kind of thing. Very casual, very low key. The next tier is a facilitator. Facilitator is someone who has a lot more experience, maybe they've studied therapeutically, maybe they've studied with a teacher, which is, probably the highest tier. Someone has a whole point of view around the protocol of plant medicines, what type, dosages, strains, the right setting. But facilitators are very often those who are executing the work. Maybe we see some nurses burnt out from COVID, great caretaking experience, moving in where they're taking some courses in psychedelic assisted therapies. It's a growth industry. It's going to be a really big industry. So you're seeing a lot of people with, some maybe psychotherapeutic experience or, caretaking experience studying facilitation. Facilitation is also someone who usually is organizing a setting. They do intake, you have an exploratory, and they assemble a group. You pay for that. They assemble a group and they tell you more about the types of medicines that are available, and then they provide some direction on how to do that. And then there's teachers, and the teachers come in all forms. The most important thing today is that, like anything that gets popular, there's a lot of pretending. So one of the things that I want to always encourage is, we don't need health coaches pretending to be shamans. There's a lot, right? Everybody's a shaman, So it's very important to take that pretty seriously, that you look for good credentials, good credentials. And we make many referrals ourselves. And there are many good organizations now. We can share with you good organizations that are doing good psychedelic assisted therapeutic work. Okay, so that covers some of the key issues. In our world, we do encourage what we do, and just so as a word from our sponsor, that anyone that comes to a class like this, first of all, everything's recorded and we send a recording. So those people maybe have signed up but couldn't make it tonight live, we send the recording. You can watch it. And anyone that is attends or registers is entitled and encouraged. You can go on our website. You can sign up for a one-on-one private consultations, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, does not cost anything. It's all about our commitment to trying to just educate. you know, that we're living in a world where you don't need everyone doing microdosing. You just need enough of us that are becoming acquainted and having good results. I can tell you that the experience that I've had with several hundred users is just remarkable. We need the continued effort for legalization and research, all the things that as adults we want. We're seeing great opportunity with older adults, great opportunities for family work, lots of opportunity. And the downside of the mushroom is really that you just, not every, some people are allergic to mushrooms, but the downside is more, you know, finding the way to have a good rhythm with your own body, your own heart, your own spirit, you know. So let me see if I can take some questions, because then I can make sure all right. So Julianne, can microdosing assist with other types of addictions, such as that for amphetamines, opioids, substances? Well, yeah, I mean, psychedelics can. I mean, most of the really good work that's being done now is with ibogaine for addiction. I mean, particularly with narcotic, hard narcotic, you know, opioids, for example, amphetamines. Ibogaine is where there's a lot of research. There's a lot of clinics. Many of them are in Mexico. But I would make a note, if you've got someone in your world struggling with that, it's not, microdosing is not going to get you there. You need more combination of professional therapeutic support with ibogaine and several other, you know, maybe it can be done with psilocybin, but not generally. Generally, you have to handle it differently, you know. Okay, then it's can macrodosing help with memory stimulation and mental alertness? Yeah, it's a great question. You know, a lot of people that we see, a lot of people, they start microdosing and they tell you after a month, you know, I didn't really feel anything, you know, nothing's really changed. Yeah, a little uplift, you know. So that's real obstruction, you know. Some people are really, they got a lot of obstruction, and the way that we handle it is you got to have a breakthrough. You got to get them to break through that obstruction. So the dosage becomes the low dosage that for a lot of people who are sensitive is really great, because they can kind of build up their self-confidence, their self-worth, and they're sensitive. The other people, other contingency is very contracted. Nothing works. I've tried all kinds of things, you know, I haven't really, you know, nothing really helps. So that's where you need a macro dose. And once you have a macro dose, then you can scale it back to microdosing, because you kind of, whew, boy, now I know what they're talking about, that kind of thing. And we have, it's not an uncommon issue where people are and very often people start microdosing and, I don't know, I don't really getting that much out of this, I'm not, they stop, you know, which is understandable. So we do use macro dosing, taking people as far as they can go self-directed. So you can macro dose, you can have pretty much a nice, not a serious state change, but just altered state enough that you go, oh wow, now I know how, now I get it, now I know what I got to work on. So that's a really important thing, and we tend to find that we tell people all the time, you know, we'll have, you know, toughies come in and, oh, you know, I've tried all kind of things, you know, nothing works on me, you know. But once they are set up with a good intention and they macrodose, very often then they can scale back. Not to be, you know, stereotypical, but we see a lot of men, and the men, they come in and they just want to macrodose. They don't want to microdose. They just want to blow their brains out. A lot of men these days, particularly in the finance industries or technology, really, really tough times, very, very intense. Many are being replaced. They're going through this trend now where these really well-paid knowledge workers, 30 years old, they thought they'd have a career till 60, and they're getting replaced, anticipating AI and different trends. And so they realize that their whole being is transactional. And so we counsel them on how to microdose just to get back to their hearts. They're privileged to have gone to great schools that make great money. They have everything to be proud of, but they lost their heart. They're very, very transactional, So in any event, I could tell many, many stories about different trends. What are the good strains for elevated mood and self-growth? Well, as I said, I think these albinos, very good Taj Mahal, which is a strain that's very, very nice, comes from in Oregon. The golden teachers are very popular. They're more pretty widely available. They tend to be used quite a bit for mood elevation. Yeah, there's a bunch. Hillbilly, there's and by the way, another form of ingestion is just doing mushroom dried, and making it into a tea in a very traditional way. So that's not that's good to know. How do you know if Narita? Okay, how do you know if a person is allergic to mushrooms or how to prevent it? It's a great question. I mean, we're told we have clients. They tell us that they have they know that they're allergic to mushrooms, and I guess mostly through a culinary experience. They eat it and then they have an allergic reaction, and we take the position that if you've identified because you got an allergic reaction to a mushroom and enough, I mean, obviously you can have it tested. You don't want to use psychedelic mushrooms. We don't recommend that. It's pretty rare, but we do see it from time to time. I mean, I think to determine whether you might be allergic, I think is something you'd have to see medically. How do you test for it? Off the top of my head, I'm not completely certain how you test for that type of allergy, Yeah. I want to encourage more questions. Yeah, elevated mood. Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and so what I think that I also want to point out that in the end, it's about feeling happier and being able to cope with it, very, very, very challenging. I can tell you that it's just amazing to see how much we have. The study of fungi and mushrooms is not. It's not an easy study. It's only now they're starting to, Cornell and Harvard, all these schools are starting to have botanical sciences embrace the study of fungi. Fungi is not a plant. 400 million years ago, the plants were in the sea. The mushroom was on the land. The mushroom said to the plants, I'll help you get on the land. Let's collaborate. The mushroom helped, traded for some photosynthesis, and that was one of the ways that plants started to migrate onto the plant. So the mushroom been around a long time, And one of the nice things about the whole ethos of the mycelium is it really does connects us better with a sense of engagement and connectivity to nature at a time where I think so many of us, particularly those of us who live in the cities, I mean, I'm a native. I was brought up in New York. No one took me to the jungle, no one took me camping, maybe a little bit at summer camp, And so I lived for a long time with the trauma of really not understand what it meant to hug a tree, and go out in the desert and commune with the stars. I really didn't. I kind of would intellectualize around it. But then about 15 years ago, I went on a peyote journey, where you go for like 3-4 days and you eat peyote and you stay in the desert. And it was transformative for me because I was a city kid, the jungle was the city, urban jungle, And so it really helped me completely reset my appreciation for a walk. And even now I still struggle with taking hikes and how to get myself in closer to nature, in a true way for personal growth, and I think that a relationship with the fungi and the mushroom really help, What's the difference between, do you recommend, if you're growing your own mushrooms, how would you determine the dosage? Well, that's Sarah Harrison. Well, if you're growing your own mushrooms, I don't know. I mean, growing your own mushrooms is kind of I think you have to dry them and weigh them, just like everybody else, Interestingly, I think the future, people ask me a lot about the future of legalization. I think you're going to see in 5 years, you're going to be able to buy the mushrooms and it's going to revolutionize. It's going to be another appliance in the kitchen. You can be able to grow the mushroom, extract it, put your personal DNA in. You're going to have the strains very, very specific. You can grow the mushroom, liquefy it, extract it, and have it. Is more, I think in many ways may be more likely than seeing it it's on some retail shelf. I think you're going to see it through therapy. I mean, the first phase is you're still going to have to go to a therapist and have it prescribed as an option to a pharmaceutical antidepressant, which I think we think is very positive, But from a retail standpoint, I think it's really interesting to see the new generation of appliances where it's very much DIY, do it yourself, and they're very sophisticated, so you can get quite scientific. So if you could adjust the type of extraction, you're going to see more drops, the use of drops and tincture. And that's really exciting. Do you recommend microdosing in times of burnout or better to rest? Yeah, well, rest is really good. Rest is a big help, I think microdosing is I just think that people should start, I think if you're out there and you're able to have a point of view and a mindset, realize that if you're a mama today, microdosing can be very important, because if you're a mama, let's take a mama. The mama came in yesterday. She's 50. She brings her son in. He's 20. He's going through that period where he doesn't want mommy anymore. He doesn't need mom. He's going through his whole thing, He's smoking so much weed. The weed is 40% THC. It's not 10, 12, 15% like it was just 10 years ago. He's very passive. The mom says to the son in front of me, Douglas, I want you to start microdosing. I want you to stop smoking marijuana and start doing microdosing. The kid says to his mom, Mom, you telling me that you want me to try psychedelics, you know? And that it was fascinating because it was such a shift in a relationship where the mom cared enough to want to see him maybe try microdosing to handle his mood swings, get him to be less passive, activate, get more creative, feel more blessed. I mean, when you use mushrooms properly, you definitely feel more patient with people. You don't overreact as much. You're more empathetic. You lose old friends. I have to tell you that. That's a risk. You lose old friends because when the mushroom comes over to spend time with you, it does not like when, old friends. Oh, they all want to hear, they just want to tell you their problems. They don't necessarily want to hear your problem. And so the mushroom becomes your friend. The narrative is be more selfish. Your time is valuable. Put up more don't try to fix everybody else's problem. Um, Focus in on who's most important, you know, reacquaint yourself with the family. Many things like that that really give more meaning. There's more longevity, more sustainability to those relationships. So that's an important thing to point out. Um, I think burnout to me is what's burnout? You depressed or you just life transitions or career breakdowns? I mean, I think that it doesn't matter. I don't think burnout is a function of whether you should try microdosing or not, you know. Um, what's the difference between a good mushroom experience and a good cannabis experience? Well, cannabis is a change of mood, change of state, but it's very short-lived and it doesn't really identify, it doesn't give you the insight that a mushroom would give you on your cause. It just makes you feel happier for a period of time. It's a sacred plant. I mean, we produce fantastic cannabinoid extractions. That's how we started during the CBD boom. We started with making cannabis. We're very experienced in the making of these products. It's a big asset that we have. We work with scientists. We work with growers. We work with extractors. We're very knowledgeable. But I think the mushroom experience is just more medicinal. Really make changes in lifestyle. I think you get with fungi, whereas cannabis I think is more about enjoyment, a change of pace, a break from the action. Still better than maybe alcohol, but in more moderation. In fact, I think more and more people are using edibles now than they are smoking. And everybody's had an experience having a brownie that they thought that they're just going to have a little high, and they were out of it for 7 hours. So dosage in cannabis is also very challenging. But there's more and more product on the market, also because of the recreational dispensary industry. At least you can go and, if somebody says it's this, it usually is that. But so I think cannabis has its place for sure. I mean, but moderation. One of the great things with microdosing becoming where it's all about moderation. Everything becomes more about doing things in a more moderate way. I mean, it's fine. Who doesn't want to have a beautiful glass of wine and the culinary experience with wine and mezcal? Sipping is in, by the way, with psychedelics. Sipping, not drinking. Sipping things, tasting. More and more activation of the scent and taste. Can you be on ADHD medication like Yes. I mean, look, these microdosing is just a game changer for ADHD. I mean, that's the most common thing. People are coming in and saying, I got OD, I got AD, I got all, PTSD. Yeah. But I think micro because what the microdosing does is it gives you a very gentle way into getting your arms around your own personal health. Um, but you have to do it. Usually it takes 3-4 weeks. It's not a year, but it takes a few rounds. People are very impatient. We all want to take an aspirin to take care of our headache. This is a little different. With mushroom, you have to be more medicinally minded. Things take time. If you have a contemplative practice, it's really a big help. If you're a runner or you're doing performance athletics, biking, all of that, it's really, really a great ally. So and you just have to be careful of the risks. The risks are know your source, ask good questions, study, watch listen to some podcasts. There are good teachers out there. There's a lot more good podcasting where you can get educated. And when it comes to medical issues, if you're blessed to have a therapist, talk with a therapist. If you don't have a therapist that is progressive towards this type of um, mental support, health, mental wellness, then you may want to evaluate that. We make referrals to really great psychotherapists all the time. Really good psychotherapists that are involved with microdosing. They're very busy. They're pretty tough to get a hold of, but we do everything we can. If we talk with someone in a private consultation or anyone that's microdosing with us, we work with them. Yeah, the medical issues that prohibit, I mean, obviously you can't microdose. You shouldn't microdose if you're pregnant. You can't microdose if you have a bipolar disorder or a schizophrenic disorders, those kind of things. Um, there are people diagnosed with paranoia, that kind of stuff. You can't just microdose. You have you need definitely need medical support and insight um, to but if we have people going through chemotherapy, come out of chemotherapy, we have several women recently having to contend with breast cancer, and maybe breast removal because of breast cancer. Microdosing in order to get a sense of attitude around the power of their soul and the power of how do you contemplate a loss of a part of your body. Could be your liver, could be your breast, could be your kidney. How do you manage that? And mushroom microdosing can be very 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 helpful for that. At least that's an experience I've had firsthand in terms of some of the clientele that we have. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that I've done the best I could do tonight in a short amount of time. I don't want to keep you guys any longer, but Ezra will put in Ezra will put in the website. Anyone that wants to reach out. The Alchemist Kitchen is in Soho. We welcome your visits. We appreciate the support in this period. I think we're really in this is one of the things, one of the trends going on, that those of us who can get our arms around this is a great way to build community and connection. Because I'll tell you one thing, when I meet people that are trying to help themselves through this process, I feel trust. And God knows we need trust today. We need to feel connected to community in a different way. And this is one of the areas where I think we can see that together, because it takes doesn't, we don't need everyone. We just need some of us to be learning together, because it's a learning process. Everybody is unique and different. That's another risk. Everybody is different and everybody responds differently. And inherent in that is making sure that we don't just simply say, oh, this is good for everybody. It's not always good for everybody at the right time, the right place. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for attending tonight. Thank you. Good night, guys.